So can we just start, let me ask you, what is EmbediVet?
So EmbediVet is a small implantable device that gets placed into the neck of the cow. And what it does is it begins to take vital signs and biological information, runs it through some machine learning, and then begins to make predictions about the cow. So things like, is it an estrus? Is it getting a disease? It can identify things potentially before they actually would become outwardly symptomatic, which is good because then you can kind of reduce things like antibiotic use and that sort of thing in a more precision way.
So this is like, it's a little device and you stick it into the cow, and where on the cow does it get embedded?
Yeah, so it goes into the neck. That's not an arbitrary choice either. We do that so that we can get the head position, which is indicative of a number of conditions with the cow. And then if you can get grazing motions, right, you can the head's facing down and the jaw's moving, then it's grazing. If it's kind of sitting up and it's moving, it's ruminating. And those are also indicative of a lot of conditions that cows have.
And was there something with the way that the cows get processed in the abattoir as well that was useful for the neck position?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. You remove the head at the neck, or so, when they come in for processing, and that makes it easier to reclaim so that it doesn't go back into the food system, because, you don't want to microchip in your burger.
Correct. I do not want a microchip in my burger. Now, I understand you have some stuff, something to show us. Can we get something? We've got some live data, maybe. What are we looking at here up on the screen?
So this is on our test farm. We actually have cows that are implanted with these devices, and this is their activity levels and their heart rate over time. And we've obviously changed the names of the cows to protect the innocent. But you can see there where the activity is actually mirrored, but not identically. So you have, this one guy who we call Iris, who's, a little bit more lazy than, say, Gerald. Gerald looks like a little bit more of a go-getter, and this sort of thing. At the end of the day, and that's one of the things that's interesting is that these cows, they have similar behaviors. Obviously, it's a herd mentality. But at the same time, they actually are individuals. They're unique, and they have unique biological patterns.
So this is a live feed coming through from Eris and Gerald.
Yeah,
We're basically spying on them. Do we have approval for authorization from them to observe this data?
Yeah, they sign consent forms.
They sign consent forms.
Just a hoof mark on a little piece of paper.
Great. And I understand we're going to be pushing this link out through the app so that you can have a look at it and see exactly what kind of stuff you can look at. And then do you derive additional data beyond heart rate and activity? Is there what else do we get to learn?
So we do temperature and oxygen saturation of the blood, but then from there we can extrapolate a number of useful criteria. So activity and things like that are related to things like estrus, and most problems like that would be contagious have a signature fever spike that can't be detected by the farmer until many days later, at which point you start to lose productivity. And then even if you've treated the animal, it will continue to lose productivity for the next couple of days. And then you actually have to kind of make a decision. Maybe I should send old Bessie off to the abattoir a little early. So at the end of the day, this is the kind of thing that we want to try to mitigate for the farmer.
And how big of a deal is this? Like, why is this important?
Well, I think that it's massively disruptive, but I think that what was interesting for us is we went around and we interviewed a lot of farmers, and what we found was that they actually really love their skill set. They like what they do. What they really didn't like was that they had to spend a lot of time doing things that were just about checking up on stuff, right? So I talked to one farmer, and he said that every day, or like when there was a heifer out there that was going to give birth, he would have to wait. He set an alarm every 2 hours, get up, get on his coveralls, go out, check, make sure a calf wasn't stuck, go home, go to bed for another 2 hours, and then do the whole thing again. And they hate this sort of thing. But what they would like is a cow that can kind of raise its hand and say, hey, I'm sick, come tend to me. And then their skill set springs into being, and they do their jobs, and they love it.
So you could connect this to an alarm, for example, something that pings you or wakes you up or automatically calls you when the cow is actually giving birth, and then you only have to get up once when you're actually needed.
Yeah, you'd get a text message, something like, hey, it's been 30 minutes of labor activity. Maybe you should go check.
Right. Awesome. And I know this is a startup, but how close is this to commercialization?
I'd say we're about 6 months out from commercialization at most. We're starting, we have our test farms, and then we're actually doing some tests at some agricultural universities that focus on that sort of thing. So Charles Sturt University, University of New England, we're starting a trial on Monday. So and we're trying to just make sure that we have good validation in an independent way. Once we have that, it's kind of, we're just going to ramp up the sales machine and really go at it. We also have two of the largest beef producers in Australia signed on for commercial pilots, so we're pretty enthused about that.
Awesome. Tell us about the very first trial that you did. What was that?
Oh, that was,
like?
well, the first one we did was April of last year, and that was Utah State University over in America. And that was just a very small trial, but just to make sure that the animals were comfortable and that they were not, that there was not going to be any signs of rejection or infection. And it actually went better than we thought. It was a much larger device than we have now. And the cows just, after about 2 hours, they're fine. They don't even notice. And so they seem to like it, and they seem to like it actually better than collars and these sorts of other solutions, simply because once it's part of them, they're not going to try to, they'll try to knock off a collar. They typically don't try to knock off their own skin.
Right. Okay. And how long does it last? Does it need a big battery? Do they have to wear a battery pack on, or how does that work?
No, so we tuned it so that the sample rate would give the device about 3 years of time, and the typical lifespan of these animals is about 18 months. So we wanted to do about double that, and so at the end of the day, these are more than enough to handle the lifetime of the animal.
Awesome. We have a question from the audience, which is, are you doing any work with tattoo-style sensors, so sensors that go on the skin rather than under the skin?
No, we feel that the integration of the technology, the tattoo ones, they kind of peel off eventually and this sort of thing. We'd just rather it just be fully integrated into the biology rather than kind of something that you constantly have to stick on yourself and maintain. That's just, there's other people that are doing that. They're doing it way better than we would, so I let the experts handle it.
Yeah. Now, I know you would never be so reckless as to test something on cows without putting it through some robust other testing first. Can you tell us how you first started testing this kind of concept?
Yeah, so I come from a kind of a tradition of called biohacking. And basically what we do is, we kind of try to find little low-grade superpowers that we can kind of get, and we test that stuff on ourselves. So, for example, a couple years ago, I did an implant in myself that took my temperature once over every 5 seconds, kicked it out over Bluetooth. Then I built a thermostat at my house so that when I would get cold, my house would automatically heat up, and vice versa, and this sort of thing. This is really where my passion lies, is integrating biology with the digital world and making making our kind of surroundings kind of adapt to us in a seamless way. And so we kind of joke around a lot and say it's safe for cows. We test it on humans, no problem.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, because I know a little bit about you, so I'm just gonna ask you a bunch of leading questions because I think you're so interesting. Sure. One of your first implants, where did you put it? Because we had that question about tattoo sensors earlier. Don't worry, this is not about to get awkward.
No, I have a little tattoo here, and I actually took the temperature sensor one. And I put it underneath this tattoo because it had some green LEDs, and so I was able to get this kind of creepy back glow light to my tattoo. It was kind of awesome looking, and so we did that, and we had a little Easter egg in it, so that there was a setting you could set it on. It would do party mode, and then it would actually strobe the lights to the rhythm of safety dance. It was ridiculous. So.
That's awesome. And how does airport security deal with you?
Oh man. So when I did the one here, it's fairly large. So if you guys go to look it up later, just content warning, it's a little bit scary looking. But
it's gross. It's really gross.
But at the end of the day, I was walking out of Dusseldorf Airport when I got it done, and you go through the scanner, and they have you put your hands up, and the woman looked at the scanner and just went. She called her boss over, and the boss kind of looks over, and he goes, I don't know, just let him go. And that was it. I just walked right through. It could have been anything. It could have been uranium.
I guess if you're willing to implant uranium in your arm.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right. Okay, let's come back to EmbediVet, sure. Which is what you're here to talk about. So you said maybe about 6 months away from commercialization. You're doing some big trials in Australia. You're doing some big trials in the U.S. Let's say someone in New Zealand wanted to access this product. Is that possible? How do they go about it? What does that look like?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We'd like to do trials here in New Zealand. We have some funding through Meat and Livestock Australia, and we're kind of focused on the red meat industry. And New Zealand is one of the only places that we can go outside of that market without kind of violating some of the terms that were put on us from Meat and Livestock Australia. So actually, it's beneficial to us to actually introduce the product here. This is one of the only other markets that we can without incurring like some sort of royalty or something like this.
Right.
So at the end of the day, we're very eager to kind of work with New Zealand to introduce this product. So yeah.
Awesome. And I'm sure anyone who's potentially interested in this product is going to want to know the answer to the next question, which is how much does it cost?
So we focused heavily on price point because we know that the margins are extremely tight, and even though we know our value proposition is pretty heavy, we know that farmers, it just doesn't matter. I mean, over a certain amount, and farmers can't handle it. So what we did was we looked at how much it would cost to produce it, and then we realized that we couldn't do that economically and get it to the price point we wanted to for farmers. So we went back to the drawing board, and we actually made it reusable. And so basically, once it's reclaimed at the abattoir, it can be re-put into the population. So at that point, you can spread the price over the cost of over many lives of cows. And so we're looking at a price point of about $5 to $10 a head. We're still trying to exactly work it out, but at the end of the day, we think we can deliver the value proposition effectively at about a $5 or $10 price point.
Awesome. And do you need like a specialist person to implant the product, or how does that work?
Well, that's another thing we focused on, because we know that if you have to call a veterinarian out, that's going to be a problem, right? So we hired a very, very slick mechanical engineer named Roger Foote, and he had worked with several different implants, cochlear implants, some heart pacemaker stuff, and he is building us this sort of applicator piece that you can kind of it's almost like a piercing gun for like piercing ears, right? So you just kind of walk up, and any old person can just kind of, and then right into the where it needs to go, and it's fine, and everything works the way it should. And
you mean like any old person could do it, not like any old person could do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, a farmhand can do it. Basically, it would be under the animal husbandry rather than veterinarian, right? And that's really what we wanted to focus on, because if you have that bottleneck, the farmers are just going to be, this is nonsense. I don't want it.
Yeah. And what's been the feedback so far from the trials that you've run?
Well, the feedback's been great. It's I've been working in software and new products development all my career, my entire career, and this is probably one of the very few times where we've just done something and it worked. And that's such a rare thing in software and development. So it was really nice for it to be this opportunity rather than like when I was building like accounting software somewhere. So the feedback from the farmers is obviously this is good data. This is exactly what we want to see. We want to know these things about our animals, and it's helpful. So far so good. And the people who are actually adopting our private trials are actually saying things like, well, because we said, well, we're going to reclaim them after a year because we need to analyze the implants and make sure that there's nothing else going on. And they're kind of saying, well, we want to change the contract. We don't want to give the implant back and stuff like that. And we can say, well, we'll just give you the new one. It's fine. You know what I mean? It's okay.
Cool. We have another question from the audience, which is, what kind of regulatory approvals would you need in order to launch this in the U.S.? Is it a USDA thing? Is it an FDA thing? That's Food and Drug Administration or U.S. administration?
So it was really strange. We went around to try to look for all of this stuff, and we see who's regulating this, and we contacted every agency we could, and every single agency was like, not us, it's probably these guys. And we just went around, and then it turned out that it's completely unregulated. Like, nobody wants to touch it. It's like a hot potato. It's like, and we had set aside a whole bunch of money in our budget for dealing with regulations, and then it was just like, no, okay, all right, I'll just implant a bunch of I'll make cyborg cows all day, man. That's
awesome.
fine.
So it's basically the barrier is your relationship with the Australian organization. It's not the regulatory approval.
Yeah,
in the
and
US.
even in Australia, there's very, very little regulation going on in terms of the implant. Most people are just kind of pointing to the other people. The applicator piece is the part that could be regulated, but when we contacted the regulatory agencies, they were like, well, we don't think we're going to have a problem with that, but thank you for contacting us, because apparently nobody does that. Apparently everybody just brings it to market and then waits for somebody to slap them on the hand. So they were just thrilled that we were actually willing to ask.
Awesome.
Yeah, so.
Can I just ask you, you were chatting with my, I don't know if any of you saw the young boy who was here yesterday, but my 11-year-old stepson, you were having a chat with him. You were telling him about some other implants that you have that allow you to feel.
Yeah.
Tell us.
So I have a rare earth magnet implanted in my finger, and what it does is it allows me to feel electromagnetic fields, like live wires behind walls and microwaves and hard drives working. I once actually troubleshot a laptop power bridge issue with just my hands, like, and kind of feeling it and that sort of thing. And people kind of said I was a wizard, and I agreed, and this sort of thing. So it was adding a sense, right? And when I heard about this phenomenon and realized that that was possible. I mean, I'm the kind of guy where curiosity tends to trump safety sometimes. And when I heard about it in April, and by May I had a magnet in my finger. I was just running around feeling all this kind of stuff, and it was really interesting. And I just don't want to live a life that's boring. So,
I don't think anyone will ever accuse you of living a life that's boring. We've got time for one last question. Where can this technology go? So beyond heart rate, beyond cattle, what is the kind of ultimate application for this stuff?
Well, I mean, I think ultimately you're talking about looking into the human population and beginning to mitigate preventable diseases. And preventable diseases are something like 2/3 of the cost of the European healthcare system, and it probably translates into the same. So there's like $1 trillion, that's trillion with a T, right? In Europe, for example. And if you can prevent these preventable diseases, I mean, I think that's getting to patient level 0, right, and preventative rather than reactive. That's where I see it going, and that's what I want. I want to help the world, and I'm going to start with cows, but hey, move on to humans soon.
Awesome. And you told me that there was an interesting thing about the way that humans reacted to the idea of implants.
Oh yeah. So when we were first doing it, and we just were focusing on the human side, people would kind of be like, "Oh, I don't know, implant under my skin. That sounds, I don't know about that." But then when you tell people that you're doing this with a cow, they immediately go, "Wow, my grandfather could use that because of this, and this." Or would you be using it for humans? And so if you let them kind of come to it on their own, apparently it's less icky. So that's basically going to be my strategy with all of you.
Awesome. So safe for cows, tested on humans, and then ultimately it will be safe for humans, tested on cows.
That's right.
Awesome. Tim, I swear I could talk to you all day. Thank you so much for joining us here. Tim Cannon, everybody. Thank you, Tim.
Cheers.